May I please invite on stage Vivek Devangan, Chairman and Managing Director, REC Limited. Sunita Narayan, Director General, Center for Science and Environment. Ulka Kelkar, Executive Director, Climate, WRI, India. Good morning, are you please? Please welcome our panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Derek M. Shah, Senior Vice President and Head, Green Energy Business, Larsen & Toubro. Good morning, good morning. And please welcome on stage our moderator for this session, Shreya Jay, Deputy Energy and Infrastructure Editor, Business Standard. Hello.
Thank you so much, Geetika. Very good afternoon to all of you. We are in a very important discussions here at the two-day Business Standard Manthan event, and this one especially focuses on a paradox of sorts. India is standing at a crucial juncture where on one side it is imperative for it to adapt aggressive economic growth, but it is also most vulnerable to climate-related crisis, which can be outcome of growth at all cost policy. So even though India invests in mega infrastructure growth and its young demography pushes demand for consumer goods, but the question of its impact on the planet and the ecology around us remains unpredictable. At the same time, India has committed to one of the most aggressive climate action plans among developing nations with the goal to add 500 gigawatt of green energy, net zero by 2070, and among other things. So during the next hour, we will try to draw your attention in finding that delicate balance between economic progress, social development, and environmental preservation. Thank you all for joining in this important discussion. I will start with you, Ms. Narayan. How do you evaluate the climate action plan of this country as it stands now, the current policies, the flagship schemes, while we aim to become a net zero economy?
So Shreya, you've put it very well that we have a balance that we have to find between growth and between what is clearly an existential threat called climate change. We are worst impacted. We are seeing our data is showing that we are talking about one extreme weather event a day in India. And that's hugely devastating, particularly for the poor, the farmers, and it's breaking the backs of people, and we are losing the development dividend every time we have a crisis of floods, of drought, of water stress. Now, in my view, we need to make sure, and the government's strategy is to find a way ahead. And if you look at the plan that the government put forward, it essentially talked about not increasing investment in coal, but increasing investment in clean energy. Now, this is at a time when we need to double our energy consumption, and that's absolutely imperative. People like us are spoiled. We live in the luxury of air conditioning, of having lights 24/7, but you have vast numbers of people who are still in dire need for energy. It's a survival need. So we would be absolutely wrong in denying them the right to energy. The question becomes, how is that leapfrog possible? How do you make sure that you go from coal to clean energy sources? How do you make sure that the current coal also gets cleaned up? Because the question today is, and as you can see the green lash that is happening across the world, this balance has to be found. And in my view, what the government has done is good in intention, and now we need to see it in practice. And when I talk about practice, I'm really talking about how do the standards that were set up by government for cleaning coal get enacted, get pushed in so that coal gets clean, the current coal plants do not emit local air pollution, and of course, we move towards cleaner sources of energy at a scale. Now, that again has huge issues, which I think the previous panel also discussed. Can you really disengage from China if you want a clean energy transition at the scale that we are talking about? And that's an open question. But clearly the intentions are there. My last point, Shreya, would be that for us really in India is to find that sweet spot. We have to be able to understand that it is in our interest to be able to move as fast as possible for a cleaner, greener today and tomorrow. And this is not about climate change. This is about our right to breathe. It is about our right to have clean water to drink. The crisis in Bengaluru today is a man-made crisis. It is exacerbated because of variable weather events like climate change. But it is a man-made crisis because of the nature of the water supply system that we've put into place. The crisis that we have in Delhi, where we cannot breathe for months in Delhi, is a man-made crisis. It is very much to do with having clean combustion in our industry, but it is also about how we will move people and not cars. And that's really the challenge that we have, to find those solutions, and those are in our best interest. So I do believe that the Government of India's plan and intention recognizes the nature of the challenge. What I would expect now is not just walking the talk, but running the talk.
Thank you so much. A great answer, opens a lot of threads of discussion here. Ms. Kelkar, I would like you to weigh in. Same question, but let me add a caveat there to make it a bit tougher. The country's fossil fuel demand is rising, and there is no estimate currently in the country which says that it will decline at least in the next decade, despite we adding renewables very aggressively. Do the current policies focus lopsidedly on mitigation more than, say, adaptation or making climate action a way of life?
Thanks, Shreya. That's a very comprehensive question. I think because this is a business manthan, the backdrop of this is that India aspires to be, I think, a $30 trillion economy by 2047. And if you plot all the countries of the world, on the one hand, their income, and on the other side, their energy, there is no country that has become rich while also remaining energy poor. So the energy demand, and Sunita also referred to this, is bound to increase. The question is, can we meet that energy demand without also increasing emissions? And some of the modeling that my organization, WRI India, does shows that actually in this decade alone, with the kinds of targets that the government has on expanding renewable energy, all the additional energy demand can come through new renewable energy, provided, of course, there's investment. And the coal or fossil fuel energy that we have, the emissions from that can be slowly reduced as we go towards 2047, 2050. Now, what this means, of course, and this is the question that you're talking about, is we cannot take a solely carbon lens. We have to meet all of these goals together. And I would highlight three aspects that need to be really taken care of. One is that as climate change risks start manifesting, the kinds of risks that Sunita spoke about, policy making will have to become more flexible or adaptive, more integrated, and more decentralized. You know, the kinds of things that you're seeing in Delhi, Bangalore, Mumbai, and so on, these are just the beginning. What we see going forward is that even the new energy infrastructure that is being created, or the new transport infrastructure that is created, could itself be at risk from more floods or more cyclones. The workers that are working, their productivity could be lost due to heat stress. So this is very much an economic problem as well. The second point that I wanted to emphasize, and this is also from an economic perspective, is if you look at the workforce in India, it's something like 520 million people right now. Only 80 million of these are in the organized sector. So the rest are in agriculture, construction, MSMEs, you know, all of these which are highly vulnerable to climate risks. And if we see the kinds of jobs that might be created, new green jobs that might be created as a result of scaling up the production of renewable energy, more green hydrogen, manufacturing of electric vehicles, construction of green buildings, all of these things which lie in the future, according to our estimate, this is something like 1 to 3 million new green jobs that could be created every year. But we have a youthful population. We have various estimates which are showing 8 to 10 million people entering the workforce every year. So again, this is something that cannot be looked at in isolation through a solely carbon lens. It is very much an economic issue. And the third and last point, which is again related to this, is that currently a quarter of our country's tax revenue comes from taxing fossil fuels. So as these fossil fuels slowly taper off, even not just coal, but also as we switch from petrol or diesel to electric vehicles, then the tax revenue that the government earns from taxing these fossil fuels will also slowly come down. And just to give a comparison, we need something like over, I started by talking about the aspiration for 2047. From now to then, we need something like $2.5 trillion of additional capital investment in all of these new sectors that I spoke about. But there will also be a loss of $1.5 trillion of the fossil fuel tax revenue, unless we think of new sources of green taxes or new ways of generating revenue. And this will be very important because it is government spending that is required for many of these developmental aspects, for adaptation, and also for skilling for job creation. Of course, industry has a very big role to play in all of these through corporate social responsibility, through skilling programs, but the government public spending on things like health, water, also becomes a very crucial foundation. So we have to look at this as a whole of economy policy making, not just through a solely carbon lens.
Thank you for bringing money into the conversation of climate action, which is largely missing. That brings me to you, Mr. Devangan. Growth is inevitable, so is infrastructure growth. You make the money move across most of these sectors. Are you witnessing a shift where, as Ulka said, business and corporates are adapting green as not just as a CSR activity, but a conscious business choice, and you as a financer is witnessing healthy returns from that, which makes you invest more in these sectors?
Let me just give you an overall picture. India is the third largest producer of electricity after China and USA. And India is also third largest consumer of electricity. But per capita emission of carbon dioxide or per capita consumption of electricity is only 1/3 of the world average. See this in the context of our developmental aspiration that we want to become a developed economy by the year 2047, and we are also committed in Glasgow that will become net zero by the year 2070. In the pursuit of becoming a developed economy, our carbon emission is bound to grow because our per capita consumption of electricity, per capita emission of carbon dioxide is also 1/3 of the world average. While the developed countries, the per capita consumption of electricity is about 10 to 12 times of the world average. Similarly, per capita emission of carbon dioxide is also 10 to 12 times of the world average. Now, let us see the track record of India. India is one of the few G20 countries which has been able to keep its commitment which we had promised in COP21 at Paris in 2015. We have been able to reduce emission intensity of GDP by 30 to 35% as compared to 2005 level. This we had committed that we'll do it by the year 2030. But we already have achieved this target by the year 2022. Now that's why we increase our ambition that will reduce our emission intensity of GDP to about 45% as compared to 2005 level by the year 2030. And we also promise that we'll be able to install 500 gigawatt capacity of renewable, non-fossil fuel based electricity capacity by the year 2030. Since renewable energy is intermittent in nature, will require storage solution, will also require evacuation of this renewable energy through green energy corridors. So as per a preliminary estimates made by Central Electricity Authority, this will entail a total debt financing about 20 lakh crore in next 5 to 6 years by the year 2030. Similarly, for becoming net zero by the year 2070, total investment would be to the tune of about $10 trillion to $15 trillion by the year 2070. So it will require huge financing requirement. And in REC, we have made our business strategy, like our renewable energy portfolio is about 34,000 crore as of now. Keeping in view the debt financing requirement about 20 lakh crore in next 5 to 6 years, we are targeting a humble pie about 3 lakh crore. We are planning to increase our renewable energy portfolio by 10 times to about 3 lakh crore by the year 2030. So but the issue is that the cost of financing. At what cost we are providing the financing, that is the real challenge for which all the policymakers, all the multilateral development banks, they have to put together and bring down the cost of financing of this energy transition related initiative.
Interesting. I'll come to you, Mr. Shah. You're probably in the toughest spot in the green supply chain. While the country has an ambitious clean energy deployment plan, indigenous manufacturing to support is largely missing across a lot of sectors. You are trying to plug that hole. How are you navigating this space, and what challenges and opportunities do you foresee in the green fuels, green hydrogen, electrolyzers, and also battery storage that you're dabbling in?
Yeah, thank you very much, and you're absolutely right. We are navigating this in a manner that typically Larsen Toubro takes up all challenges in its stride. So when we have seen in the manner in which all the statistics were rolled out, the 500 gigawatts of renewable power coming in, green hydrogen, 5 million tons already announced in the green hydrogen mission. So we kind of positioned ourselves to say that as it was very correctly said, we'll not only walk the talk, we'll run the talk. And what we have exactly done is, we are one of the first movers to get a license to manufacture electrolyzers in India. We set up shop. We have already rolled out our first electrolyzer, and it's going to be in the initial stages, 300 megawatt per year, rolled up, extended to about 1 gigawatt capacity per year. This is just the first and the beginning of the green hydrogen supply complete issue that we are tackling. And in the morning session, it was very heartening to hear Honorable Minister also speaking about the Chinese dumping of many equipment, technological equipment, and I thought this is a right opportunity to say that we, as one of the leading corporates, when we are trying to bring in our effort in manufacturing top-end, highly efficient, low-cost manufacturers, it's important that we do also get similar support by, making sure that we don't have to actually look at a non-compete field with a Chinese electrolyzer coming into this space. Having said so, we are not kind of resting our laurels on this. We are not only manufacturing as per the, we have a French licensor, so we have set up a research lab. We are working on electrochemistry. We are developing the anodes and cathodes to go to the next level, higher generation, electrolyzers. And within a couple of years, we would be possibly the most efficient, largest manufacturer and the lowest cost manufacturer of electrolyzer right now. I have already declared in your business article itself that at present, we are at 50% cost of European electrolyzers, very, very close, breathing down the neck of the Chinese prices. Possibly in a year or so, we will be cracking that number also. And we will be playing a big role, not only in manufacturing, possibly you spoke about manufacturing. We at Larsen Toubro, along with many other corporates, we are looking at how to develop the complete ecosystem in the green hydrogen supply. We are aware of the requirements, domestic requirements that are coming up in the sectors like the refineries and fertilizers, trying to replace the gray hydrogen as it is. The next tranche of the PLI that has come out in terms of 200 KTPA that is going to be tendered out by the OMCs. We are already in discussion with multiple global reputed companies who are also looking at us to supply green hydrogen and green ammonia out of our plants. So we are kind of trying to look at the entire value chain of manufacturing, setting up plants, and also generating green hydrogen and ammonia for these requirements.
That's quite fascinating. Ms. Ryan, the corporate fervor that has come in the green energy sector, along with a lot of policy favors, has happened during the last decade or 10, 12, 15 years. What has been the impact on the country's economy? Has there been a realization across the economic planning that choosing a greener option makes the economy richer, and it is not just some side investment that the companies or the policymakers have to think about?
So I'm not the right person to answer this. I think industry would be the right person, to answer whether they have incorporated it. As an outsider and somebody who's looking in and examining what's happening, I definitely think that Indian industry is getting far more aware about the needs to transform, to take on actions which are good for them, but also good for the environment. I think the scaling up will need to happen, particularly in the hard-to-abate sectors like steel, like cement. We have just done a report on both iron and steel as well as cement sector. And whereas green hydrogen definitely will play some role, there's a lot that industry can do right now to be able to reduce its carbon intensity, whether it's the use of recycled steel, whether it is the more use of slag and fly ash in the case of cement. You can really see changes that can happen today. So I don't think we need to wait much longer, and this is good economic sense, energy sense also for industry. I think where I am not seeing and where we need to make sure that we have a better environment is really, as you very correctly said, the question of finance. And if you look at the international finance, the cost of capital is still so high to be able to make the transition that we need. In India as well as Africa, I mean, India still is 10%, 12%, Africa is 20%, okay? You cannot make renewable energy projects viable. You cannot make the transition that you need at the scale that you need. So low concessional finance is going to be critical if you want to make the leapfrog, and especially at the scale. But the other part of it is really private finance. And I think that's where the story is very, very bad. I don't see private finance coming in for the transformation that is needed. It's very cautious, it's very risk averse, and you don't see it happening at the scale that is needed. And worst, we see scam after scam happening in the name of private finance. So carbon trading or voluntary carbon trading, which has been a big thing that industry has touted as its big achievement to be able to offset its emissions so that you can do business as usual, you can fly as much, you can do whatever you need to do as long as you've offset your emissions. Our own analysis has shown that how much of a scam that is. You're over-crediting, you're not sharing benefits with local communities, you're really not, in that sense, not even walking the talk, you're not even crawling the talk, forget running the talk, okay? So I think both in terms of private finance is going to be a big story, and the other big challenge in India is going to be really the question about medium and small scale industry and how do they then make their emission intensity lower, which will be good for them as well as the local environment.
Thank you so much. Ms. Kelkar, you have worked with the states in developing their climate action plans. So while at national level we are seeing some laudable policies, ambitious targets, what has been your experience with state of climate action in these states? And do you think that they are becoming proactive and it is making much more economic sense for them? And I want you to talk about both coal and non-coal rich states.
Okay. Thanks, Shreya. So we work with a range of states. We've worked with very industrialized, developed states like Tamil Nadu, which are coming up with very proactive climate policies, climate change mission at the district level. We're also working very much with states like Bihar. Bihar government has recently come up with a long-term strategy for climate resilience and low-carbon development. So certainly, I think in all of the states that we are seeing, there is this focus not just on looking beyond the state action plans on climate change, which were these 5-year timeframes, but looking longer term at how there might be green opportunities coming through investments in low carbon sectors. But I'd like to draw your attention to some of the states, because you hinted at that in your question, which actually lose out on multiple fronts. So with states like Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, these are highly vulnerable to climate change on the one hand. They're very hot, flood prone in the case of Bihar. Secondly, they often tend to have high dependence on fossil fuels. and actually sometimes low potential for renewable energy. So if you look at the wind power, it's all concentrated in the south and the west of the country and not in the north or east. Bihar, for example, has so much intensively cultivated land and such a high population density that if it has to become net zero, it'll have to buy renewable energy from other states. And thirdly, the point that I mentioned earlier, that because the economic diversification is low, will these states benefit from the new green jobs, the new green opportunities that are coming up? Will there be skill development for the population? And although for the national government, 25% of the tax revenue comes from fossil fuels, for states like Jharkhand and Chhattisgarh, it could be as high as 30%, 20% that is coming. So on all of these fronts, vulnerability as well as the shift to low carbon, some of these states might lose out and will need special attention. So I want to basically highlight 3 examples very briefly where these states can also benefit from this green transition. The first, as Sunita mentioned, the focus on MSMEs. So could you have circular economy-based jobs in MSMEs? It could be recycling of steel scrap, as you spoke about, or battery waste, EV waste, solar waste. Now, this will have to be, the entire supply chain will have to be worked out. A procurement policy can definitely play a role in this, not just a skilling policy. The second is that you will need sustainable cooling, cold chains in agriculture and in health. So here again, these can be based on decentralized renewable energy. And the third I want to talk about is climate budget tagging, which is a policy that is being adopted by a lot of states, like Odisha was the first, and now even cities like Mumbai has just come up with one, where it becomes a tool to identify what fraction of your budget in every scheme, in every department, is going towards climate-friendly actions. So it helps you mainstream these concerns into your ongoing policies to track them over time, monitor them over time, and make sure that they increase over time. So again, many of these examples that I've given you are from finance, from industrial policy, procurement policy, and all of these types of instruments can be used by states to further climate action.
Thank you. One last question before I open the floor to the audience, and this is to both Mr. Shah and Mr. Devangan. On states, to you I want to ask this, these are the states which are probably your demand and supply centers both. So how do you map this demand landscape? And Mr. Devangan, how fiscally healthy are states to take up these new initiatives? And in the long run, will it make them more fiscally healthy?
Let me share with you that again, the states which are the largest consumer of electricity, they have been taking the most of the financing benefits, like the state of Tamil Nadu, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh. With the introduction of this revamped distribution sector scheme, a lot of financial and operational efficiency is happening in the distribution sector. Over and above RDSS, this Government of India Ministry of Power had introduced this late payment surcharge rule. That has brought in a lot of discipline. The dues of the GENCOs and TRANSCOs are being paid in time. The government department dues are being paid. They have agreed to a common trajectory. The government department dues are being paid in time. The subsidy is being paid by the state government to the distribution companies quarterly in advance. This has led to overall improvement in their fiscal health, and this has resulted in overall AT&C losses have come down by 5% in the year 2022-23. I do hope that if we are able to sustain the efforts which we have taken, the fiscal health of the utilities in the state sector will definitely going to improve.
Thank you, Mr. Shah.
Yeah. So basically, all the states which have been let's say, have had the head start in announcing the green hydrogen policy, starting with Orissa. They've come out with a very good policy. Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, now others are also following. So naturally, these states have attracted the initial investments. People are starting to take parcels of land near ports, trying to set up plants. But this is, other states are also following up. They are conscious of it, that the requirements and the demands are going to be across sectors. So what I believe is, while the states will lay the policies, the industries will also be attracted to on the demand centers. And the demand centers are based on the industries which will be decarbonizing or taking steps to decarbonize itself, starting with the refineries, which we just said, the fertilizers, We were very hopeful steel industry will follow. So the demand centers and the location of the industries in the particular states will drive the demand, and the states will be compelled to be, announcing the initiatives in these.
Thank you so much. We had such a wide array of points that were discussed. Are there any questions from the audience that we can take quickly? Please keep it short and please introduce yourself. The person here in the blue shirt, please. Probably just take one question. Yeah. One, and then we'll take just one more question from the person there. That's it. I'm sorry, we are running.
Ma'am, my question is for Shah sir. I am Ashish. I am a renewable energy corporate finance professional ventured into equity markets. Sir, like when you're talking about green hydrogen and you're talking about the demand centers, still the green hydrogen isn't at a very nascent stage. The cost and the capex is on a very higher side. And when you talk about the demand side, still the policies are not so conducive. The government has not made mandatory for fertilizer or various other industries that they should have that percentage of ammonia or green hydrogen. So my question clearly is that next 2 to 3 years, where do you see the cost of green hydrogen coming down, and how do you see the demand scenario improving in India? Because except the top 10 companies in India, 10 to 15 companies, nobody has that, what you should say, balance sheet to support the capex for green hydrogen. I hope you got my question.
Yeah. So I think this was point possibly in this because of very interesting debate. The cost parity did not get discussed as much, and we have rightly touched upon this point. It's important to understand that any disruption that happens and a technological disruption happens does bring in the issue of the comparison of the cost of the new technology versus the cost of the existing technology. And that's the debate between green hydrogen versus gray, and why is green so costly, and will it ever survive, and who will buy the costlier green. We have to be conscious that the gray hydrogen that we speak of has come of age after 3-4 decades. It has also gone through its own cycles of concessions, support, and multiple other things. Green hydrogen is in its nascent, you are right. Technologies are far more mature. And we also need to understand that there is a conscious need not to do a comparison of green on spot versus gray on spot. Because green hydrogen that you do is on a 20 to 25 years cycle that you're talking about. And gray is dependent on spot, whether it's dependent on natural gas. The natural gas prices could fluctuate hugely in the next 5 to 7 years. And also it's a dollar indexed. So that means if we are a country which imports natural gas based on a very, very precious foreign dollars. Tomorrow, with an appreciated dollar, the cost of gray, which appears low now, could be quite high, and we are very sure that the curves of gray and green will kind of intersect in the next 5 to 6 years, and then all this debate around green hydrogen not viable will go away.
Thank you so much. We have extended our time here. Anyone who has questions can catch the panelists at the sidelines. Thank you so much again.
Thank you to the Honorable Moderator. Please do come together for a group photograph. Any questions, as she said, ladies and gentlemen, can be taken during the break offline. We will quickly prep the stage for the next session, please. Once again, requesting you all to put your hands together in a show of appreciation for our esteemed panelists who've taken the time out to join us here at Business Standard Manthan, and thank you very much for moderating.